And again, if you have any questions, just bring them on in. Or if you just want to comment, whatever. The box is there. So today, sales skill, and I call it Sales Skills 101, Back to Basics, because I think sometimes we forget that sales is a really simple process. It's just like if you're an athlete, when your game's off, when you're all of a sudden not hitting the baskets, or you're all of a sudden not running through the line, or you're all of a sudden not passing the ball or hitting the ball, coach always tells you, let's go back to basics. So if something in your sales process isn't working, if you're not getting the business that you want, then maybe we got to go back to basics. Practice makes you really good. And as salespeople or people who are involved in the selling process, we don't want to practice. I talk to people who've been selling, and I've been selling forever, and people say, practice? I know how to do this in my sleep. Well, the question I want to raise to you is, if I'm a professional quarterback, do you think I could pass the ball in my sleep? Then why am I practicing 40 hours a week and playing very little? We need to practice. So the first tip of getting back to basics is make sure you practice. You're never that good. No matter what you think, you're never that good. All right, if you don't practice, you might not be that good at all. I don't care how long you've been selling, because no one, as it says there, no one is that great. What I want you to do is take a half an hour, 30 minutes a day, and work on some skill in your selling package. And a lot of you spend a lot of time in the car. The car, as you heard me bust on people last week, and I'll bust again a little bit this week. The car is the greatest selling training process place there is. I mean, you're in the car, put on something, turn off the talk radio, turn off the music, and listen to something that's going to help you be even better at selling. First tip for today on your list: record yourself. And this is especially for those out there who are not really salespeople, but maybe you have your own business and you need to figure out how to sell, because that happens to be part of the process, and you're not at a point yet where you want to invest in a salesperson, or maybe you don't want to invest in a salesperson. So what I want you to do out there, the first thing is I want you to record yourself. Listen to how you sound. And if better today, with iPhones, iPads, and all that, videotape yourself. We used to tell people to practice in front of a mirror. And, I'm doing this session actually in front of a mirror, because even though it's a webinar, I think, first of all, I always stand up when I do webinars, because I think it's important to get the energy flowing. So listen to yourself. How do you sound? When I train salespeople, one of the things I like to do is I like to do a 2-day camp where we do just video. We bring in like 7 or 8 people. We'll video a presentation. We'll do an analysis of it. We'll let everybody see it. And then you can really see those things that you do consistently that maybe you shouldn't. Are you really that good or really that bad? I think sometimes if you're an entrepreneur, you think you're really that bad. But then you say, hey, I'm not that bad. I've had people walk in my door who are even worse. Your voice might be fading. One of the things that I catch myself doing sometimes is I have what's called a faded voice. So I'll start saying something and then I'll get quiet. And the customer will say, what? And then your voice is kind of fading off. So, and it's a tendency a lot of us have. Maybe you're weak. You got to be a little bit excited no matter what you're selling. whether it's something that's just code, like some service, like, you know, I don't know. I don't want to call any of you guys cold, but it doesn't matter. You love what you do. You love what you sell. It needs to project through you. And then, of course, speaking clearly. Work on your voice because it's very important. And recording and listening to yourself will show you all this. And then you can say, okay, let me work on this a little bit. Or maybe let me read a book. Or maybe let me get some help somewhere. And then let me see how much better I am. You might be surprised. But you don't want to surprise the prospect by not being at your top in your skill. Number 2, how is your product knowledge? How many of us learn something or learn about a product and then we think we know it all and we don't really keep up our skills? Do you really know the product? I mean, if you sell a lot of products, this becomes even a bigger task. One of the great things you'll hear me talk about in a minute. There's a process you can get a hold of called guerrilla selling. Same people that did guerrilla marketing, and it's a great process. You really should get a copy of it. They have some great techniques in there, and just some little stuff that will help you be even better. But one of the stories he tells in there is about the sales guy who knows the product. Now we say, well, that's what we got technical people for. That's true. But their job is to know the technical end. Your job is to be able to handle any question the buyer has. So you should know the product backwards and forwards. One of the things you can do is, what questions could I be asked? And when you're doing your presentation should have all that in there already. What kind of questions are you being asked? You know, if anybody wants to share, just throw something up on the sheet here. Is if I'm selling a technical product and every time I talk to a customer, they always ask certain questions, what I will then do is I will then make sure when I present, I cover those questions. It's a great hint to me. It's a great hint that says, hey, you need to talk about these things because people are interested and people are concerned about them. When's the last time you changed your presentation? You know, we do it and we do it and we do it, and after a while it gets so boring. So change. You sound like an old record. I think that's what the slide said. Add something new and then practice. And you will hear me throughout today's presentation say practice, practice, practice. Because it's just like when you're playing in the big game. By the time you get ready to play in that game, you know everything stone cold. When you walk into a selling situation, you should know it stone cold. You should be able to go bam, bam, bam. Not that you overtalk the client or not that you just rapidly knock things out, because nobody likes that. But you should know it that well. Number 3, your competition. Now again, I'll go back to the guerrilla selling piece where he talks about a sales guy who didn't just know his product. He knew how it compared, or it can be service too, how it compared to 3 or 4 of the top competitors that he was selling against. So when the customer raises an issue and the customer says, well, that product does this, you can say, that's true. But you know, because the product does that, it had to take off something at this end, or they had to change up something. Or yes, that's a plus there, but I just want to warn you that by doing that, they had to sacrifice something else. And that's what happens when you know your competition, especially those of you who are selling a product. And we always say, this product is so generic, everybody can sell it. The only thing they're buying is you. Well, that's true, but know your competition. Know how you compare. And people say, well, how do I get that? Today is the day of the internet. You can get the price, the spec, you can get anything on your competitor today. And the stuff that's readily available, you should know. When you walk into a presentation, a couple of the weak points on your competitor, you should work that into your conversation. Not talking badly about your competitor, but talking about, well, some products may have these issues that you have to deal with, and it may cost you time, energy, or money. Why should I buy from you as opposed to your competitor? How many of you have been asked that question many times while being out there? Why should I buy from you, Manny? What makes you different? Now, I happen to sell a service, and one of the things that makes me different, as my friend James Malachek says, what makes us different is we've been there, we've done it, and we're still doing it. I'm not just teaching people how to build a business. I've built the businesses, I've done sales for years, and I'm doing it today. We're building a brand new coaching practice and seminar and webinars. So that's what makes me different. And I'm not somebody who came out of I used to use this line because it's very good. I do a lot of work with small business, and what makes me different is I spend my life working in corporate America. I've been working in the small business realm, and that's how I know what it's like, as many of you out there do, is how to pull that credit card out because all of a sudden I need to make a payroll. I don't have enough money in the bank. Where am I getting the money? I got to pull it out of my own account. When you work in corporate, there's this everlasting cash bundle out there, and that's sometimes gets us a little foggy. But the point is, what makes you different? You need to know that. It's critical. And what else might your prospect ask? What kind of question? Again, I want to emphasize to you, know the questions. Know what they're going to ask. Know what they're going to talk about. And when you're done presenting to them, they really feel comfortable and confident that you know what you're doing and that your product does what they need. And this is why. Number 4. And I think you heard me last week harp on this a little bit, and I'll do it again today. Listening. The greatest selling skill that you can have is your ability to be quiet and to listen to the customer. Do you know how to do that? And I think we talked about this last week when we were going over the skills. Do you know how to ask questions to find out what you need to see if you have a great fit for the customer? Do you know how to do that? And not just ask the question, because a lot of us can ask questions. And I was working with one of my clients this week, and we're working on the listening thing because she felt she had a real issue there and wanted to talk about it. Let me just look at something here. Okay. So I want to make sure I got everyone. Okay. Anyhow, she had a big question about, am I listening enough? I'm not. I have a tendency that when somebody starts talking, then the point comes up where I want to get in. I want to answer them right there, and a lot of times I interrupt them. Or even worse, you don't interrupt them, but your mind stops. You're formulating an answer, and you're not listening to anything else that's coming at you. And they're still talking, and they're giving you information. And this is what you learn as you sell more and more. Because with young salespeople who were just starting, I used to have this issue all the time, is let the customer talk. Because the customer will tell you 90% of what you want to know without you even asking, because they love to talk. Do you know what you didn't cover? That really just means, okay, we talked about A, B, C, and D, but you know what? The customer never asked this question. They're going to call back. They're going to ask that question later. Let me talk about it. Because I know all my customers always ask that particular question. You see, the thing you need to understand about sales is nothing more than moving yourself to the buyer position and saying, would I buy from Manny? Would I buy from Manny? I always put myself in the position of you as the buyer. I mean, we got a big boot camp coming up, which I'm going to talk about a little later. And I always have to put myself in a position to say, would I buy this? And so how can I change the product around so people will buy? Shut up and listen. I know people hate it when I say that, but I can't really put it any other way. You want to be effective? You really want to learn to listen? Be quiet and listen. Number 5. Whoop. There we go. Gosh, what happened? Okay. Work with a partner. And I know some of you maybe have a small business and you're running it all by yourself, but you got a partner, whether it's your spouse, whether it's a friend, sometimes it's somebody else in business, but you need someone to listen to you. One of the things I do for my customers a lot of times is they want me to help them through their sales presentation. So I said, look, sell me. 9 out of 10 times what you got is something that I'm probably going to buy somewhere along the line. So let me be the customer and you sell me. And I know a lot of times what you sell out there doesn't fall in that realm, but you need a partner. You need someone who you can bounce your sales process off of, and they will listen to you. Let them go out and present to them. And it has to be somebody who's not necessarily going to be your friend, because you need to present and they need to honestly tell you, hey, Manny, you're playing with your fingers. Hey, Manny, you're scratching your ears. You're scratching your eyes. And we have a tendency, until somebody watches us, not to see that we're touching ourselves all over, or we're doodling with paper, or we're doing those things. Get someone to watch you. I remember I was on a sales call and with a client, and I was trying to help her sell this investor, and one of the things that happened was she said, Manny, you kept playing with your fingers, and I didn't know that. So it was a great piece of information that she shared with me, and she was the client. So it's amazing what you can get if you have someone to look at you. Get some outside opinion. And I'll do it, and maybe you want to. If a customer doesn't buy, I have a tendency at times to say, well, could you tell me, was it something I did? Was it something that I caused you not to buy? Or does the product just plain not fit you? Or are you just not ready to buy yet? Now, if you give them that third option, they'll usually take it because they don't want to hurt your feelings. But I've had customers who have actually told me that I think, Manny, you're too aggressive. I couldn't work with you. And I'm not going to change that. I appreciate the honesty, but I want you to be successful. So that's who I am. But I appreciate the honesty. And you should too. If somebody says, well, your product is just too much more than what I need. And you say, okay, well, that's the product we have. And I would love to sell you something later, but I can't. But maybe I can introduce you to somebody who can. And I have it to, if I'm working with you and I'm not the right connection for you or the right coach, I will refer you to somebody who might work with your personality better. How do you really sound? And again, we talked about recording so you can get that. But again, somebody else's opinion may say, Manny, you're too loud. You raise your voice too high. You know, you do this or you do that. That is critical information to make you better. Let them play the buyer and then tell them, I want you to push me. I want you to be hard on me. I want you to be that tough buyer. I want and see if you can handle it. Because if I have a friend sitting there working with me and we work on this, or you have a coach there helping you through that, you don't have to learn like many of us learned out there the hard way by losing the deal. Because you've already been through that tough buyer. You know how they can push you. You know how they can sometimes push your buttons. So practice it. And then when you're all done, would they buy from you or wouldn't they? That's always the question. Would they buy from you or wouldn't they? So those are kind of the 5 things I wanted to cover today. Some of the questions, let me just back up here a moment. I had a question on listening here.